I'm not here to talk about compassion, though compassion is essential and sorrowfully absent from American life. I'm not here to talk about God. I'm certainly not expecting God to intervene on behalf of anybody. When has God ever intervened? And you won't hear prayers from me, ever. Prayers don't bring back dead children. In fact, as we must sadly acknowledge, nothing does. We can't console those parents. We have failed again. We can't console the parents of Columbine or Sandy Hook or Parkland. And now we can't console the parents of Uvalde. I'm here to talk about the sick joke we call law enforcement. Yes, law enforcement were in Uvalde saving lives, their own. We have heard about the abject failure on every possible level of law enforcement in Uvalde. We've heard and read and watched the stories of parents pleading for law enforcement to enter as the gunfire continued inside and children were being murdered. We heard about parents tasered and maced and handcuffed and arrested while their children were being murdered inside the school. We heard the story of the mother jumping over the fence herself, unarmed, to save her children. She's lucky she wasn't shot by law enforcement. Think about it. Instead of stopping the shooter, they were tackling and handcuffing and macing and tasering and arresting the devastated, grief-stricken parents outside. Imagine you were one of those parents. But what I haven't heard or read or seen, but what is clear to me, and I believe will be clear to all of us, was the underlying reason for the failure of law enforcement. Were they cowards? Were they incompetent? Were they stupid? Or were they racists? It just might be all of the above. We keep hearing of the infiltration of white supremacy into law enforcement and the military. A story emerges here and there about it from around the country, but like everything else of crucial importance in our society and the world, the mainstream media machine, in constant need of titillation and salacious content, gets bored and moves on to new topics, and then the story quickly disappears. But just because an amoral media ignores this epidemic doesn't change the fact that it continues to spread. And we see examples of it, not only again and again, but more and more. Remember, of the 21 victims of this massacre at Robb Elementary, 19, including the 2 teachers, were people of color. And what are the racist Republicans' rote response to all of this? Laws don't stop crime, so why pass them? By that logic, why have laws at all? Their philosophy has become, fuck the law. Let's just have chaos, and the people with the guns will survive it. Ironically, the gross old perverts party, aka the GOP, insists we need less laws for everything, except to control us, our private lives, our choices, and especially women's bodies. No laws banning guns that kill thousands, mostly wielded by men, but strict laws banning abortion. Save the fetuses at all costs, including rape and incest, 2 of the GOP's favorite pastimes, and then simply make it easy to kill them as children later. Another GOP favorite. Protect and serve? What does that really mean? Protect and serve the status quo, that's what. Protect and serve the bigots and racists and white supremacist agenda. A white supremacist law enforcement apparatus for a white supremacist society. Make no mistake, enforcing the law has no other purpose, and maybe never has had any other purpose, despite the relentless propaganda, than protecting and serving white supremacy. And if it means standing down while brown children are murdered, then so be it. Remember, Ramos, the shooter, crashed his grandmother's vehicle, the grandmother he had murdered to commence this killing spree. Then he opened fire on a funeral home. Weird choice, kill the dead? And then stood outside the school firing his weapon before he entered. During that time, prior to entering the school, despite repeated 911 calls, nothing was done. And later, law enforcement, surprise, lied about it. Law enforcement has no compunction about lying. Not bald-faced lying, white-faced lying to perpetuate their false narrative. And if not, where was everybody? What were they doing? What were they thinking? Though much of this is ingrained in the American psyche and history, this part of it represents a new trend. We know these racists feel man's laws are puny and ridiculous and not to be taken seriously, even though their job is to enforce that law. But now, even these religious hypocrites think God's law, the God and the laws they supposedly believe in, are just a joke too. Thou shalt not lie? Bullshit. You know, there were no Jewish policemen or soldiers rounding up Jews in Nazi Germany, or black policemen in the Deep South beating and brutalizing black protesters. We know what's going on. We know if we ever want things to be truly fair, we must start by tearing this system down. But remember, we are surrounded by the racists with guns, and they'll kill you and they'll blame you for your own death in the same breath. And remember these assault rifles that the Republicans protect more than the lives of children? Don't wound or simply kill. They destroy a body. Every bullet is like a bomb going off inside these children. That's why parents in Uvalde are being asked to give DNA samples, because their children are so mutilated and disfigured that they can't be identified by appearance alone. It's sickening to me and you, yes, but apparently not to everyone. Did you know Uvalde spends 40% of their budget on law enforcement? They have a SWAT team that likes to pose in front of their tank in full regalia. Think of that in contrast to actually what happened there, to what they actually did, which was fucking nothing. It's a joke where the punchline is mass death. What about the 14th Amendment? Equal protection under the law? Well, the Supreme Court actually said that was bullshit by a 7-2 vote back in 2005. Look it up. So if you think the police are going to protect you, that is not true. The question then is, what are we giving them our tax money for when so many other essential services are left woefully underfunded, including, of course, mental health services that the Republicans themselves tout as one of the great solutions? Remember another salient fact. While the overpriced, overfunded police stood outside, twiddling their dicks and fingering their triggers and doing nothing, 2 school teachers, both women of color, both underpaid and underappreciated by this society, died trying to protect those children. If there are any heroes in this tragic moment, it's them. You know, after similar mass shooting incidents many, many years ago now in the UK and New Zealand, both countries passed gun control laws. And they have reduced mass shootings to virtually zero. But we live in a country where the corporations control the politicians and the dialogue and the laws. We live in a country where a few hundred deaths means billions in profits for a small group of people. So ask yourselves, cowardice, incompetence, stupidity, racism? Seems like all of the above. But you can add, it's also part of a cold, calculating plan. A financial equation. The powerful making billions from guns and ammunition equals the deaths of the weak and helpless. So on this Memorial Day, when we are supposed to commemorate those that have died in service to our country, let's not forget these children. if laws are passed that stop these so senseless they're almost absurd killings of children, then maybe we could argue that all the children murdered by guns died in service to our country. But if we don't, these children have died for nothing. Thank you.